Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Amar with ZenMaid. And if you'll notice, my eyes are at the right point for the Zoom video. If you're listening to this on your phone right now, it's not going to make any sense, but just imagine on screen in your head me looking really good. All
Where
right,
did that happen, by the way? Because I gave him feedback, and feedback
that is right.
is the topic of the day. Tell us about feedback. Give us some feedback.
All right. So feedback, that was a genius intro. Very smooth. Okay. So feedback is something we were just chatting about before, hitting like the record button, that Jeremy was talking about how he has a feedback mechanism in QuickMail that happens at the all hands meeting, I believe, on Fridays, right at the end of the
We
week. Is that every
do a
week?
circle of feedback, but I think the main point is that I engineer the whole company around feedback, and I think for me it's like that critical. I think one of the thing I probably forgot to mention to people working with me as to probably why it is so important to me to focus on feedback. And then, Amar just suggested, like, why don't we talk about feedback in general? How do we get feedback? How we get feedback from our customers and so on. So that could be like a super broad topic. Maybe we can narrow it a little bit, Amar, to some type of feedback, or like what should we talk exactly about feedback?
Well, I actually kind of like actually want to just dig into that statement that you just said, that you kind of created the entire company around feedback, and
That's
I'd
right.
like us to just kind of dig into that, talk about what you mean there, and then talk about the different ways that we get feedback. Like, I actually think that this can be very productive as kind of a broad general topic of feedback. We can also go into much more specifics of how we actually get customer feedback, but I don't know that we want to go that granular in today's conversation. So can you talk about what you mean by you built that into the company?
Okay. I think so. That's going to be an interesting also discovery session as well for me, because I didn't really think too much as to the why. But this is really important, and I think very interesting is, I believe as employee who move from being employed to owners, they try to build a company that sort of like address some of the things they didn't have as an employee, one way or another, right? Whether it's you like independence, or people being able to take independent things because you didn't have independence when you had your 9-to-5 job as an employee. I think there is always that element in all the sort of founders that I talk to when they engineer their culture of their company and so on. There was some element to address some of the things that bothered them, in their previous employments. I don't know which one it is for you, and it probably will be interesting to explore it. Or maybe you have like a quick idea, maybe, to answer to this one for you. Or
yeah, I mean, I was definitely unhappy with different things in previous companies that I definitely tried to bring to the company. I've tried to bring to the culture, but I think you should continue on.
Yeah, okay, that's cool. For a lot of people, that's fairness, like they felt like they were treated unfair, and so therefore they tried to create some culture of more fair and so on. For me, I always have been feedback, and I think from the very beginning, and I think that's how I'm hardwired, and I actually enjoy it. It's like I like high performance, right? And I like to operate at the you give me a crap sometimes for that. Like, I will try to optimize everything to a full sometimes, and it's not needed and stuff like that. And mostly you're 100% right. But I always consider myself as a sort of like high achiever, high performer. And I believe to the core that you can't really get that if you have social harmony that come at the expense of providing feedback. That is like, oh no, that was great, but in fact, I know in deep down that actually you could have done that better and could have done better, and I don't give you the feedback. This is a terrible situation for me. And I've been always in all my job trying to get like ruthless feedback.
Ruthless,
yeah, really brutal ones, because I always find that that's the one that helps me to grow the most, and become a much higher performer. So as part of this sort of personal quest, in every company I was like doing some anonymous feedback. Like, I was like saying to everyone, like, hey, can you actually write some feedback to me, give that to that other person, and that other person is their manager and so on. I wouldn't know what it is, but then I received the feedback one way or another. And then they mentioned that as well in the Netflix book. Like they're also very focused on feedback, and that's when I figured out like actually this is a book that actually I feel myself addresses a lot of my concern. And so at that point, I gave the book to every employee in Quickmail, so everyone had to read The Culture of Netflix. Like I think it's what is it? It's like No Rules,
Rules.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah. And then they really go through all the reasons why they're putting the feedback in place. But I think I've done a pretty piss poor job at explaining them why this is so core and important to me. And mostly, I think it comes back to performance, right? I think that sometimes it's too easy to not mention something that is difficult to hear when it comes to performance that would help that person actually perform much better, right? And I'm not immune to that. Actually, some of the hard feedback's been given to me at Quickmail. Kudos to whoever actually gives me hard feedback. I respect them all the more, and that really helps me to become better. But I put like all the tools I could in place to actually, help with feedback and helping, playing in that first league. I'm not interested in like what is that, like Sunday soccer kind of thing, like the sort of friendly kind of play.
Sunday league, yeah.
Yeah, for us, we need to be the top league and we need to win the championship together. And for that, I don't think there is any way around having sometime, tough feedback, and not tough in terms of trying to hurt the other person, but like telling them what they need to hear in order for them to perform better. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Where like you're where like you're coming from and everything.
Like I've been lied in the past as employee as well, like saying like, oh yeah, things are great or whatever, but they never really, and those people didn't actually tell me the thing that I needed to hear in order to perform better, right? It was always kind of like that political stuff or like social harmony or that's upset or whatever kind of thing. And
okay,
so
you're talking a lot about
disloyal to me.
You're talking a lot about feedback that's like that's related to employees and maybe is critical of employees. So two questions there. So first of all, what sort of culture do you have around feedback, not just for employees, but maybe for like the company as a whole, or like how to make the company better? And so that's like one question. And then the second question is, do you think that giving people feedback or like giving people constructively criticizing people and like being nice to them are like mutually exclusive? Because it sounds like you think like, okay.
No, absolutely not. Like, in fact, if you give feedback just to vent frustration, I think you're not giving feedback, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't consider that to be feedback either. That's not constructive.
Exactly.
Yeah, constructive is the main thing when it comes to criticism.
Yeah, and I don't think it's really hard. All you have to do is to care for the other person. If you care for the other person while you give the feedback, then I think you're doing it well. And that could be like, for example, I care about you as a friend. Let's totally a hypothetical one. Like, I care for you as a friend. When you actually keep on saying when you're doing your presentation, it makes you look dumb and people don't respect you as much. You may want to address that. It's tough feedback because someone is like, oh shit, it's like you're telling them something about their behavior that you think is not correct, but you need to hear it if you want to look, differently, right? So I'm telling you what the consequence of your action does. And I do that because I respect you, I like you very much, and I want you to improve, right? It's not the case. You don't do but that's the sort of thing that's the type of feedback I'm talking about here, right?
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, and so then how about like feedback in terms of just like the company pointing out, or like employees pointing out, hey, we can be doing this better within like the company? Like, do you consider that to be like feedback, or like where does that sort of fall into like your wheelhouse?
That's great. It doesn't happen enough. I think right now in our stage of the building of the company, it's very much built on the individual, right? The feedback is very much focused on the individual yet, but it has to go broader, like in terms of how we are doing things, and also in terms of how we communicate with our customers and so on, and I do, very often that Actually, no, there is some feedback we put as well as system when it comes to customers. So when we're actually replying a ticket, for example, a ticket comes to support. One of the things we have at the end is we have what we call a BI question, which is a business intelligence question. Every time we answer one of your tickets, especially if it's the first one with us, we're going to ask you a business intelligence question, which basically elicit feedback from them, whether it's about how they're working. So we try to understand them better, right? So that's that type of feedback. Or do you see a better way
You're
of
talking about
us
the
doing
customer?
that? Yes, when we are interacting with customer, there is a lot of feedback that we try to
Okay.
incorporate.
What about from the actual team though?
In what sense? Give me some examples.
Okay, so like for example, we just had a long message. I've been meaning to post it on Twitter from one of our lower level employees who does all of the uploads. Like she does all the concierge onboarding for all of our clients. And Alex has built her an automated tool to help her do part of that process that she used to do like manually. So she did like a 3 or 4 paragraph write-up that was directly to Alex and Chris going, hey guys, here's something that's taking me like too much time. Based on the automated tool that we have in here, it's my understanding that like this shouldn't be that difficult for us to kind of take the tool to where it is to be able to do this, which would save me XYZ time. Can we look into this, blah, blah, blah. And that was something from a lower level employee putting a message onto Slack, tagging in the CTO and the COO, asking them to review this process, right? And so that's something where it's not like it's not even really a criticism of anything. It's just here's a feedback loop of how we can improve like this process. So I guess my question is, do you guys have that sort of thing going on in the company where people are saying, hey, maybe we should change this process because it doesn't make sense anymore, or change this rule?
No, that's a great question. Bear in mind that you're talking to one guy who is like very engineering, focused. So a lot of those things are already very streamlined. But what we have is we call them open loops. So every Friday we discuss about, we have two weekly cadence. I think we mentioned that in one of the podcasts. We got the Monday where we decide what we're going to do, or we talk what we're going to do, announce what we're going to do this week. And on Friday, we say like, here's a demo day and this is those things. But we also carry on the agenda. And the agenda as part of this Friday meeting is discussing open loops. So if someone has a question or a mention, like typical, that's a great point that you have. It will have like, hey, can we talk about optimizing this process? Then it will put it on the agenda for the open loop. And then when Friday comes, then we come and then say, is there any open loops? And then we look at all the open loops. And whoever put the open loops here is going to start explaining why they put the open loops here. And then we decide, what do we do with it? And we try to close the loop, whether it's like effectively we move forward with that change of process or do something else. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And so
we don't do it
for now. You have
on the moment kind of thing. We kind of like a dedicated place where everyone can like, okay, this is a place for discussing those things.
But right now, I guess that this is probably more of a team size like thing, but you have everyone that's like involved in those decisions, right? Like
yes,
you
because we're 7,
like
so we are still all on the calls. Yeah, exactly. It's a whole hands meeting at 7. It's still manageable. I don't think that will scale to 20 or whatever. We'll need to figure out different ways of addressing those things. But at our size and at our scale, I think that was pretty okay for us. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because our approach is a bit different in that we try to take care of everything without like those calls. That we like for us, for something to get onto the executive agenda, it means that it's got to be like a serious decision, right? So most of the time,
how many more employees do you have? You have more employees than us, right?
Yeah, we have like 25 or so on our team. But I mean,
my stuff definitely not.
Yeah. And so with that, we try to have it where like the parties involved make the decision and make the decision quickly, right? And then like let us know what the decision is and essentially move on, unless we go, hang on, like you guys did what? And then like we've got to like come in and like and reverse it or review it or whatever. But that's like quite rare. So okay, cool. That's really interesting with the feedback, because I think I've found internal feedback to be the most valuable thing in terms of building the company. And I think that the same thing that you were saying of kind of building the company around like feedback is I think what we do as well, but I think it's very different in terms of like the reasons why. That to me, it's all about kind of fostering like the team culture, that I do think that it is how like we win in the long run and how we get the best, like the best possible business. But really it's also how we get like the happiest employees and the happiest team. But for me, that's because a lot of my feedback is around how do we make the business like better for you guys as the employee? What should we
It's
stop doing? What should we
interesting.
start
Yeah.
doing? How do we make it better for like for the customers? And then everything that I'm doing is essentially balancing what the customers want, what the employees want, and what the business like needs. And of
Of
course, the
course.
business needs are always going to win out there,
Of
but
course.
most of the time we can find a way to accommodate everyone. And so, yeah, it sounds like we're operating very much on like the same kind of like I don't know if like cadence is the right word, because obviously our cadences are different, but the same principles, which I think is really
It's
interesting.
no, I think in what you're saying, I did notice like, oh, holy hell, we have a different approach actually. So I don't think it's similar in that
Hmm.
sense where, um,
Okay.
but I like your approach and I should do more of your approach. I think right now, and I think you opened my eyes just like, hey, great, an insight on podcast. But basically right now I'm seeing and I'm hearing that, you're focusing on, improving the company per se, when I'm focusing way more, well, it's all a balance. We're all focusing on everything, but
Mhm.
it seems like you're focusing a lot on the company itself, on how to make the company better. Where I'm focusing on
Mhm.
how to grow the actual people working at QuickMail, and this is an interesting insight, because I think I probably don't do enough to actually help, or well, growing or putting the emphasis as well on the company,
Mhm.
different pieces in place and how we put the system more in place. So I'm focusing way more on the human side than I am focusing on the actual company
Oh,
side.
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you need both, right?
you
Because I
need
really
both for
like your
sure.
focus on personal development, right? Like I love that. Like that's
For sure,
awesome.
but like everything, it's a dichotomy, right? You're either
Mhm.
like focus
Yeah.
on that and then on that, and then at some point you will find your balance. And I think right now I'm like probably too much on the human side. So I think I probably should dial it up a little bit less. Like definitely the
Mhm.
cog machine, this is not a way or direction I want to go. But just building on just purely the people as well may not be scalable, because people change job, people do, it happens things to people and so on. And in fact, I've been burned in the past already by just putting too much hope in one
Yeah.
specific individuals. Well, that's the thing that we learn, it's like finding where was your
Mhm.
balance, and then clack. Yeah,
Exactly.
good ones, good ones. I'll think about it, like how can I actually put more feedback for the company itself, rather than just,
Mhm.
I mean, the individual is
Yeah.
great, I think it's already
I
handled.
Yeah, I gave a lightning talk on this, like a 2-minute talk on this at DCX
Is that
at
all you got?
DCX
Like 2 minutes
London.
of information?
Um,
That's lame. I'm out.
yeah, that's it. That's it. No, I mean this is exactly how you like how you like digesting information. So like in just like a 2-minute soundbite. So the best way that I've found to do this is you just ask every single employee or every single team member that you have at random times or on a regular schedule, whatever. All that you do is you ask them, what should we start doing? What should we stop doing? And what should we continue
Yeah,
doing? And they can answer anything related to their role, anything related to the company, anything at all that they want to answer. They can just be like, yo, like, I think that we should stop calling ourselves quick mail, right? Like,
agree.
because it's
Agree.
not mail, it's email or whatever, right? Or it could be like some of the things that we've had come out is we've had VAs come out and go, hey, one thing I think that we should stop doing is you guys are having me like format this spreadsheet and then send it over to like to this person.
Yeah,
As
it's
far as I
inefficient.
know, they
Mhm.
just upload it here. I can just upload it directly there and they can do something else like with their time. Right. And
Right.
so, one thing actually, with what you were saying earlier about different frustrations that we experienced at companies before, like starting our own,
Yeah.
for me, the biggest thing that I hated in the first two companies that I worked at was particularly because I was like one of like the sales and marketing guys. It felt like the executives and the development teams weren't listening to the folks on the front lines that were saying this is what the
Yeah.
customers are telling us. And so because of that, even though I'm not on support anymore, I'm not on support calls anymore, I don't even lead the support team, I'm still unbelievably attuned into that stuff. And oftentimes our support team will make important technical calls of, hey guys, we need to design this one way or another. and we ask the support team, which way do you guys think makes sense? And a lot of people would think about it like, oh, they're like the lowest in the company, or like, they're like whatever, like on kind of the hierarchy. But the truth is that being at the front lines, they get the most feedback. They
Yeah, for
hear from the
sure.
customers. They're the most qualified to make like the decisions. And so like that's a big reason that we have that built into the company, is like, I'm more qualified in some ways to make decisions, but there's lots of decisions in the company that I'm not the most qualified one to make.
Yeah, no, no, that's like 100%. I think what you're meant to say is you have more visibility on all the parts,
Mhm.
but you don't necessarily
Yeah.
have the exact understanding that the front line have. And that
Yep.
makes total sense. I mean, the example that you mentioned about like the quick mail as a joke, we should change your name and so on. This is typically an open loop. And so I think we
Really?
have yeah, well,
It's
no, it's
just
not an open
a
loop we
complete joke.
have. No,
Well,
no,
then,
we
yeah,
we
yeah, it's
close
a
loops,
complete
but
joke. I didn't know. Yeah.
no, we didn't have
Yeah.
that. I mean, like this is an example
Yeah.
of what one would put on the open loop if we
Yeah.
wanted to discuss about that. So we have the placeholder for that, but I don't think they have the sort of the push of the founder saying like, this is really, we need to
Yeah.
consider this. Or I put things very clearly for feedback. There's no way around. Like if you come into quick mail, you can't not have feedback. So if you're not
Yeah.
thriving on feedback, just don't join. I don't want you.
Yeah.
You're going to have a terrible
Yeah.
time, a
Yeah. Makes
miserable
sense.
time, right? But if
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
thrive about feedback and you want to become like a badass, the best at your stuff and so on, come and work for us, right? Because we're going to
Yeah.
push you. Um, in fact, one thing that made me very, very happy and proud,
Mhm.
although proud is probably not the right word here, but very happy is one guy told like, hey, Jeremy, I worked in for 10 years already, and I never been as pushed as in quickmail. And for me, that's like,
Mm.
that's great. That's the type of environment I wish I could work in,
Mhm.
as an employee,
See,
because that would
what's
push me
what's
further, right?
yeah. See, what's funny is that right there, that exemplifies like one of the differences. So you hear that and you're like, that's amazing. Like,
Yes. Yeah,
that's like the feedback. Like I've created the environment that I always wanted.
that's right.
So I get that when I hear from people like Teacha on our team who's like the VA who's now like on our dev team and does all of our like QA and is like learning to code. We bought her a MacBook, all that stuff. She sent a message in Slack that was like, hey, like I just want to let you guys know, like I've never worked with a team like this before. Like I can't believe the amount of help that I'm being given, like all this stuff. And for me, it was just like, yes, because like you asked for
So funny.
help,
Yeah.
you asked for feedback, we gave
Yeah.
it to you, and I'm like, that's the culture that I wanted. Okay,
Right.
I've got one. I don't know if it's like a
I don't
question
like
for
this.
you. I don't know if it's a
These
question for
eyes
you. Yeah, I
screaming.
know you're not going to, because I'm wondering if this is something that's going to make you go, ah, shit. I should have thought
No
of that.
chance.
So
You're giving
one of
yourself
the
too much credit,
reasons,
Sama.
yeah. So one of the reasons that I don't do the like meeting open loop like thing,
Yeah, yeah,
right,
okay.
is it doesn't really work for me, just kind of as like just my management style and everything just doesn't really fit. But the other thing, and this is where I think you might maybe this will make you like question things, is nothing annoyed me more as an employee than seeing something obvious in the company and then having to go through a bunch of bureaucratic crap to like get
Agreed.
it fixed or to get it like changed. And so the way that we do it in ZenMaid, and the reason that we oftentimes don't want things done on calls, is because oftentimes that convolutes things. It means that you got to wait and all that stuff. So the reason that we allow our team to just immediately tag people in, the people that are being tagged in, it's their
Yeah.
responsibility to check, determine if it's urgent, to get back to stuff. But what that allows us to do is that allows between exec calls, Chris might approve 3 changes to processes that now our team is executing on things that they see as obvious, and they're not spending 2 or 3 weeks to get something ultra basic kind of put through. And so that's
Yep.
why we have that filter system of like, by the time it gets to the exec call, it means like, hey, our team wants to do something, but like there might be repercussions here. Like there's a bigger business case to this that needs to be considered. The
For
team
sure.
doesn't want to make this call. Can you guys do it? Otherwise, we always encourage the lowest level person that's closest to the customers to be making those calls.
Yeah. So our second
Yeah.
value is a bias
Mhm.
toward action. So the
Yeah.
minute someone tells me like
I remember
there's too
that.
much red tape at Quickmail, then I will be
Mhm.
like, Holy fuck, we need to do something. Like this is not
Okay.
acceptable, right? because again, like I'm all about optimization, and obviously if you add rate tapes, no, I think the open loops are more like, this is a place where we discuss, like we don't need to bother everyone and so on, but everyone can also have a
Gotcha.
word and also
Word, yeah,
weigh their
makes sense.
arguments. And also it's a
Yeah,
platform for me to be able to explain the reasoning why we got some stuff sometimes. So it's also a
nice.
communication efficiency. It's not like, you can't raise
Yeah,
anything outside or whatever, but sometimes it happens,
yeah.
like people raise the thing and it's like, okay, we're starting into having a conversation, can we put it on the open loop, right? And then that's
Yeah,
a place where we do things. So definitely no red
nice.
tapes and quick mail,
Yeah,
otherwise that'll be,
yeah.
you can't play first league with red tapes, right? You just
Yeah.
can't.
And just yeah, on that, with like the transparency thing and involving everyone, we try to do that like as well, that we try to make sure all these conversations are happening in public channels. So it's like, hey, like we're not going to dedicate like a call to this because this only involves 3 people to optimize one part of their process, but anyone that wants to follow along like can. Same thing with like this just came up on our call like yesterday, that all like the financial calls that I do with the ZenMaid CFO, they're all recorded, so anyone on the team
Yeah,
can
I've
like
seen them on
can go
YouTube.
and can see. If anyone
Send a
wants to
link
buy
below,
ZenMaid, go find that. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I know this is a broad topic, but I think we
Yeah.
like highlighted a few things, I think, regarding feedback.
Yeah. Let's see. All right, before we go, what's the best piece of feedback that you've gotten since starting QuickMail?
Awesome question. Because obviously that would be lame if I create like a culture of feedback and I don't receive any feedback. I'll be like, what the F? I was like, I want to receive feedback. I created a culture where everyone gives feedback. It's to receive feedback. And in fact, I do receive hard feedback. Elaine, who is absolutely freaking smashing it in support. She's absolutely awesome. She grew tremendously in that year in QuickMail. That's one of the things that makes me happy, really happy that we reached this like, untapped potential in a sense, and then be able to just, blow something like that. She gave me tons of hard feedback and I'm loving it. And sometimes it's really hard. Like one day, like in the last circle of feedback, she said like, Jeremy, it seems like sometimes you're playing favorites. And that really hurts me, but it hurt me in a good way. It's like, holy shit, now I'm going to have to be more attuned to that. She basically said like, if we didn't win your trust yet, you're too easy to dismiss the advice from those people. And I think she's making a point, and that's why it's hard. Right? So that's the thing I still need to, keep processing, but I got plenty of them. Like, for example, she said like, Jeremy, you should be maybe reading everything we write before like jumping in something. And I know it's my tendency. That is more like my tendency, and it's much harder for me to address. But playing the favorite, or like, giving more voice to people that trust more, that's definitely something I want to address, because that's not something that I want as a behavior. And if she didn't, had the courage of telling me that, then when would I find it? It's just like, it's not a good place. And that's why like I was really happy, even though it was really hard feedback to hear.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you get like feedback?
That's funny because I see exactly what you mean of like, when I asked that question, like, okay, I knew you were going to ask it back to me, and it's like, oh, it definitely is the harsher feedback.
The whole time I was
like,
answering my questions like, oh shit, where did I get as
feedback? Yeah, exactly. But it is definitely, in hindsight, it's always the hardest feedback to hear. I think that helps you the most. At least that's like what it's been like in my experience. And so I got feedback from my co-founder early on. I've talked about this on podcasts, but like, Arun didn't really want to continue building ZenMaid with me based on just kind of like the work that I was putting in and stuff. And he wrote me a very, very long message that was essentially
typical
just
developer.
Like
they can't just chat, they have to write an email.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, but it was good. It was good. And I have it saved. Like I have it like starred in my inbox, because it was one of those kind of like defining moments, right? That he was essentially just like, look, like you talk a good talk, but like, now it's time for us to actually like do the work, and like no one is going to pay attention to what we're doing. The only thing that's going to make any impact here is like the actual work, and like you're not showing me that you want to do it. So like either you need to show me that you want to do it, or we need to go our separate ways. And like, that was something that completely woke me up. And like, in a lot of ways, Arun, that's like one of the ways that Arun completely changed my life, even if ZenMaid hadn't worked out. And then the other feedback, I think I might have mentioned this even on the podcast before, but it was just one of the ones that really like stood out to me because I took immediate action on it. It was such an easy fix. And it was just like, yeah, it was just one of those things where it's one of the reasons that feedback is so valuable. And so essentially it was Chris, our COO, called it to my attention in a direct message on Slack. He was just like, yo, past couple of weeks, you're being really, really negative towards the support team. He's like, I know that's not like how you intend to be coming across here, but just review your messages like in Slack. And I took a look, and sure enough, what had happened was that I had been removed from support for some time, and then I was coming in for very short period of times, and I was only looking for things that were like wrong, right? Well, I wasn't missing the context, but just like everything was negative, right?
Yeah, no, I see what you mean. So you see those type of feedback, they come from a place where, someone actually like you and they actually want you to improve, right? One piece of thing I would say for you, which I'm very proud we reached in QuickMail, is that a non-executive person actually can give me feedback that is really harsh and not fear for their position, for example. Quite the contrary, actually, I will respect them more for being able to stand up and saying like, hey, I want you to improve. This is a thing that you can do, which honestly, by the way, folks, I won't recommend in every company, right? Try that with your boss, but before prep your CV, right? That's kind of the thing. Did you have I say like a frontline person or someone who has no sort of like executive power in your company do those sort of harsh feedback to you?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, we've had that since day one, that we've tried to have pretty much no like kind of like power structure like that. If it's very clear who makes decisions for various things, but there's no like this person's like above someone else, right? Like even if it's like a direct report, there's no like protections like that. If it's not like Chris is right because Chris is the CEO, like Chris is right because he makes a good point, and like because he's Chris, exactly, yes. But yeah, we expect all arguments to stand on their own two legs. We expect all feedback to be thoughtful and to be coming from the right place. And as long as it's coming from the right place, anyone can give feedback to anyone else, like in the company, and we encourage that. So, but I mean, I do think that because that's like an interesting thing with what you were saying of how you guys do so much like personal feedback, that's really the focus. For us, I do a lot of personal feedback that's more of like a how can we help you grow, or it's calling to attention if maybe someone has screwed up. But the rest of our feedback is almost all company based, and it's very focused on, hey, we should start doing this. But then like the like we'll say like, oh, on the mobile side, maybe we should have like, a full-on like release process, right? Which is really a nicer way of saying like our mobile dev has kind of been like screwing up and we need a better process there, right? So that feedback does get back to the actual person, but it's always from the frame of, as a company, we need to do this better, which means this one person has to like change their role. And so that's kind of how the feedback will cascade down.
Yeah, no, I get that, and that's why I say I probably don't put enough feedback on the company at the moment, and it's way too, the balance is tipped toward too much individuals, and I think that's a great point. So I'd probably add some, making sure we had some placeholder for like we review like regularly, at least how the company could be improved itself, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Well, thank you for the call, man, and we'll see our next 3 listeners or 3 viewers next week, right?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Thanks, Anna.
All right. See ya.